Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our third protocol training today, presented by Austin Sister Cities International in partnership with Austin Community College's Continuing Education Department and International Programs Department. Our training today will focus on the UK, Ireland, Australia, Germany, France, and Italy. And we encourage you to stay tuned with our calendar for every year because we add new trainings and we change our formats to make it more interesting for our participants. Our training today, as usual, is brought together and presented by Dr. Kevin Clark, and he will walk us through how to do business and behave as we travel across Europe and all the way to Australia. At the end of the session, we will have time for question and answers. So please feel free to add your questions in the chat through the training. And we look forward to an interesting training with you, Dr. Clark. And I hand over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Aditi, and welcome everybody. I hope you're having a great morning. I can't think of anything better. I always say this, but it's true that on a Friday morning, it's about lunchtime, have a nice cup of coffee or tea, have something to snack on. What better than to talk about travel and therefore travel in essence while we're all sitting here together. So welcome, and yeah, behave is in there too, but we're going to see a lot of things we can do. Right. So today we're going to look at it. Looks like a rather large grouping, but we're going to see these actually there's going to be some subgroups in here too. In fact, three subgroups of these countries and these cultures. So I am a professor at Austin Community College, and my background is in my first doctoral program is in linguistics and the second in communication studies and critical and cultural studies. And this is just something I've always been interested in is engaging other cultures, talking about it, figuring out better ways to do that. Let's see. So let's talk about what we're going to be covering today. Here are our six cultures, countries, and the cities within them that are our sister cities or friendship city. And that covers a good part here of Western Europe and of course Australia. And you might think, well, that's odd. That's not only a different continent, it's a different hemisphere. But we're going to see culturally it works just fine as we connect it, particularly with the UK and Ireland. Our main path we want to go on, this is what I've developed, is a path from being a tourist through being an explorer, a traveler, a trusted guest, and ultimately, hopefully you as a partner with Austin Sister Cities International is a citizen diplomat. Now, I came upon this because I noticed that I watch a lot of travel shows. I watch a lot of travel videos. I try to travel when I can. People say, "Why? How can you travel so much?" Well, you save a little. You do less of other things because if you already are with us here today, you're probably of the same ilk. You like the connection. You like the travel. But I started to notice that a lot of the shows were sort of about tourism, as we see here with the icon of the camera. And I thought, but they call themselves travel shows. I'm like, wait a second, let's look into that. So I did research in this. Also found, as we'll see, that in between that may be somebody who doesn't just see things, but actually ask questions. There's an explorer. The traveler tries to set themselves into the culture. The trusted guest actually goes a step further and tries to build relationships. And the ultimate goal is, though not everyone needs to be there or will get there, but is to be the citizen diplomat. Okay, so let's take a look here. First of all, if anybody wants to just say who you are here today, yeah, we're somewhat interactive. I mean, we do have our chat line, and the great thing about it is we can get to it in the moment. We can get to it later. Feel free to share anything you like about yourself as you're here today. You don't have to be a passive observer here. Feel free to engage this. So, go ahead and you can do that in the chat line. First, I want to talk a little bit about my journey and why I did this. So I mentioned my degrees, but I'll back up a little bit in that. And I want to say just a few words about what got me interested. So I grew up in a college town. And when I was a teenager, I was in a teen magazine. And it was okay. You think it's nice. Then I started getting letters. Does anybody remember those things made of paper and use ink and put them in the mail with a stamp on them? And I got letters and I thought, oh, that's good. So I ended up having pen pals. If you remember that, before social media, that's what you had. You came home, looked for that letter on the table, somebody wrote you back and you write them, that sort of thing. And that started with Americans, but then the magazine is also sold to Europe, and I got a letter, especially from Sweden, and then it went to Asia, and I got letters from people in Japan. It was really eye-opening. I got to find out about places by doing nothing more than opening an envelope at the end of the day. Um, Also, as someone from North Carolina, a very typical thing is go to cotillion, where, as Didi used the word behave, that's really what we were there for, to learn to behave, to smooth the rough edges of your socializing with other people. It was ostensibly for dancing, but just so you could dress up a little, learn to wear a little less cologne, stand straight. And it went from seventh to 12th grade. So it was 6 years. We had a big winter ball, big pool party in the spring. I'm sure it was a relief for everyone's parents once every Saturday, every other month, or whatever it was. And that you put those two together already, you've got some connections with other cultures, other parts of the country and other cultures, and being a little bit more refined. Now, finally, when I was in college, I lived in an international dorm, and I eventually also went to, oh, good, I'm glad to hear. I'll just stop here for just a second. Wharton from Austin, Jonan. Austin originally from Germany. Uh-oh. Wait till we get to Germany here today. Oh, Alina from Romania. Oh, well, welcome. Um, from Arbor Global Group. Okay, good. Vera, City of Austin, from the Czech Republic. Oh, great. We've got quite a variety. And of course, Rebecca, yeah, from Hungary. Very nice. Thank you for being here. So I finally did study abroad. Now, I had learned, been taking French. I was president of the French club. We never spoke French, wine and cheese parties. So I decided to do something a little offbeat and ended up studying in Wallonia, the French part of Belgium. Lived there for a year, applied for residency, actually. I was a resident of Belgium, which gave me extra sort of benefits. It's a picture of me at a 8th century fort called Moa with an actual World War II flight jacket on that a friend of mine's dad loaned me. It's pretty wonderful. So I traveled a lot from there. I was on a Belgo-Russian friendship force. I traveled a lot. I actually ended up living a little bit in Paris and in Birmingham, UK. And finally, as I went into grad school, I liked the elements of language, so I went into linguistics and then shifted into critical and cultural studies. Linguistics deals with the language spoken. Critical and cultural studies deal with the people that actually speak the language and where they are, and then that matters. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Okay, so let's move forward here. If you would, just get out a little piece of paper, and I just want you to answer A, B, C, D, E. Just write them down. We'll get back to them at the end of our session today, and we'll see how you. It's not a. There's no pass or fail. It's just it's identify a type. Okay, one of 5 types. So what I'd like you to do first is just think of one country you visited or you hope to visit, and keep that country in mind throughout today's presentation. Now, that can be funny, right? You might think, gosh, there's so many countries I need to see. Seems a shame to repeat it. But of course, when you go back, as you well know, you're never repeating the experience. You can never step in the river twice in the same place, as the expression goes. There's always something fresh. For example, I will admit, I've been to every European country except I think 5. I think I've got 5 to go if I were to count them. But I've only been to 3 Asian countries. And I'm like, yeah, but I do want to go back to, I've been to Japan and I want to go back and the things different I want to do this time. So sometimes these things are both because Japan will be different for me. So think of one you've been to or one you'd like to go to. All right. So here's our first question, if you would. Just write down A, B, C, D. It's very visceral. It's whatever your first response is that might help here. Okay. When I think about this country, I mostly think about which of these, A, B, C, D, E, neighborhoods or favorite places, friendships and building relationships and building understanding, famous attractions and landmarks, everyday life and questions I'd like to ask, and people who know me there and relationships I've built. So if you would, just A, B, C, D, or E. Okay, good. Everybody good with that? All right, question 2. If I visited tomorrow, I would most likely A, return to places that already feel familiar, as I was just saying about Japan. B, look for ways to strengthen relationships or contribute. C, make a sightseeing itinerary. D, explore neighborhoods and observe daily life. Or E, reconnect with local friends or colleagues. So if you would please, just A, B, C, D, or E. Just note that if you would. Good. Should be very visceral. You automatically know there is no right or wrong. So it's just whatever you think at the moment. Good. Question 3. My conversations about this country would mostly be about A, daily life, neighborhoods, food, local routines. B, ideas, partnerships, and ways to learn from one another. C, famous places, attractions, and must-see sites. D, questions I have about everyday life and culture. Or E, people I know, catching up and building relationships. Now, you might notice there's a little bit of overlap and repetition here, but that's the point, even in a little mini quiz, is to sort of not ask a question directly, but as we'll see at the end when you gather your responses, to see what a pattern of responses is. We just want to see the pattern. Okay, number 4. What's a longer one? You're invited to something that isn't part of your itinerary. A family meal, neighborhood celebration, local cafe, or community event. You usually, A, thank them warmly, but stick with the plans you've already made. B, go if it sounds fun and unique, especially if it will make a good story or photo. C, accept if time allows, because unexpected local experiences are often the best part of traveling. D, gladly rearrange your schedule because invitations from local people often lead to the deepest cultural understanding. Or E, I seek out these invitations and look for ways to contribute and give back when I travel. I realize that last one's not grammatical, but you get the point. All right, good, good. I really like this question a lot because this is, gosh, I made plans. Can I change them at the last minute? Is this good for me to do that? Because I already have plans. I love that question. Okay, and the last question, 5, after visiting this country. So you've gone, you've come back. I hope people would describe me as A, well-traveled and full of great stories. B, someone who discovered places and ideas beyond the guidebooks. C, someone who understood everyday life and appreciated the local culture. D, someone who built genuine friendships and earned people's trust. Or E, someone who represented my community well and left a positive impact. And this is a good one too, because you know what? The questions kind of seem like the same answer. The answers seem the same to this question, but they're a little bit different. We'll see that later. And let's see. Oh, we're getting a lot of good answers online here. All good. Oh, the first question. Yeah, Vera, sure, certainly. Here we go. Anybody else need to take a look at one? Now, of course, it's not very scientific, but 5 is enough to get a pattern. I use this in class all the time. Little mini quizzes that are more to find out about your style, like for communications classes, what's your communication climate? And it doesn't ask directly. Any good quiz is trying to ask roundabout questions. Good. That good? All right, good. All right, so we'll get to that just a little bit, if you would. So let's take a look at my basic pattern here. If there's one slide that represents all of this would be it, I think. Again, as I mentioned, you want to start as a tourist. And I notice in shows and books and such, if you read these, or seminars or wherever else you go, they tend to follow, each of the people tends to be in one of these categories. They don't tend to move around like the first. You might notice Rick Steve, he was just noted as a notable American on, I think, the NBC Nightly News. And he's a guidebook traveler. He's been writing books for over 40 years. Now, his original book was called Europe Through the Back Door. In other words, not the direct route, kind of go down local streets and all. It is true. But his bread and butter is getting people who only have a week to travel. They have 5 days and 2 weekends, so they have 9 days to get them the best deals they can, to see the most they can. And that has a niche in life. There is not one of these that's better than the other. They're simply different. So the question is, what can I see? His thing is about, he shows himself walking to the front of the line at the Louvre. There's a line of hundreds of people, but he booked online, so he gets right in. He's not spending his vacation waiting in line. The next one is the Explorer. It's a little between the tourist and the traveler. You may have heard National Geographic just about, I believe about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, opened a museum in DC, the National Geographic Museum of Exploration. That's what it's called, MOE. Exploring is a little bit different. So you ask questions, you look a little closer, you have a little more time, or you stay in one place and you want to know what you can discover. Okay, now the third category tends to be the most common for travel shows and a lot of travel books is the traveler. They're very particular not to call themselves tourists. They're travelers. They understand. They don't just see and discover. They understand. Samantha Brown, Places to Love. You may have seen that one. In particular, if you ever watch ones she does on Santa Fe, she goes repeatedly. She takes family there. It's her. It's not just her friend. It's her best friend in a way. So she tries to experience places like the local. And I'm going to show you a video clip of her in just a little while. This is a place you might return to. You're not checking off a bucket list, which, by the way, I'll do a sidebar here. I really don't like that term because the bucket comes from do things before you kick the bucket, as if it's a checklist. Like it didn't even occur to me until a few years ago that I'd been to nearly every European country. I wasn't checking them off. It just came out that way. One place led to connection to another place and so on. So what Samantha Brown is doing here, she's not squeezing people into a 9-day vacation. She's saying spend time here, learn the routines and rhythms. So you're not just trying to see places, you're trying to live the place a little bit. It's experiences. So we have places, questions, experiences. The fourth is the trusted guest. Now, this is a lot rarer. There's not as many books. One of them is the travel writer and novelist, Paul Theroux, if you're familiar with his works. He wrote, for example, the Mosquito Coast novel. It's made into a movie. You might know his last name. Justin Theroux is his nephew, who's with, who was it? Jennifer Aniston, I think. His son does documentaries. What's his son's name? Louis, or Louis. But he tends to immerse himself. He, for example, in Kingdom by the Sea, he takes an inflatable kayak around Great Britain. He doesn't go into the interior. He actually visits everywhere from the coast. And he's even done this as he's gotten older. It's not just, you might say, a young man's game. So he's a little bit different that way. He doesn't really have some sort of travel show. And I'll give you a quote in a minute. I actually had a nice conversation with him once I got to meet him, and I'll show you a little bit about that. Now, this builds relationships, and especially with islands. I will point out, I use a term for myself that he invented. It's called a Nesophile. Neso as in Polynesia, Peloponnesus. It means island. He loves islands, and he lives, in fact, on an isthmus or Cape. He lives on Cape Cod, but also on Oahu. So he has a thing with islands. I do too. One of my goals is to see a new island every year. I just saw one in May, and maybe one by the end of the year. The best one is an island, off an island. That's great. So I sea kayaked from Oahu to an island off Oahu. And so it's an island off an island. That gets double credit, you might say. Now, the last one is what only some people really sort of get to, we see here, is the citizen diplomat. This is when you build understanding. Ultimately, this is what you're going to do with Austin Sister Cities. As an ambassador, or whatever you want to call yourself in this, if you do this enough, you're not just building relationships, you're building bridges. This connects it in a more permanent way. The difference of becoming a friendship city, moving up to a sister city. Things take time, right? This takes time. This is not something on a 9-day vacation. This is 9 years. This is longer. Okay, so that's our basic guideline. As you can see, I kind of put this on some of the bottom of the slides. Now, one of the reasons I got interested more in this kind of topic subject matter here is when I was in Belgium, I sort of lived in Paris as well. And I would notice as I would sort of walk around the city, as you do when you're 21, you ignore some of the museums, but you just walk around and go to cafes and bars and that sort of thing. And I noticed this Midwestern couple were trying to get a picture of Notre Dame from I believe, the left bank here along sort of near the towpath. And one of them said to the other, "You're going to get the picture." And this woman said to her husband, he goes, "Well, I'm going to wait till these merchants get out of the way." Because a typical scene is a lot of North African merchants along the way. They're usually French speakers, so they're Algerian or Tunisian or Moroccan. Um, and I thought that was very strange because if you look at this picture, I want you to notice you see Notre Dame there, particularly prominent post-fire and Reconstruction. You see some people walking, you see a river, but predominantly you see these merchants. So what was funny is what they were aiming for was actually this. This is what they wanted, but it's not what they got. And in fact, what you see here could easily be a postcard or a calendar or something painted on a plate you can put on the wall if that's what you like. But the problem is, I realized in that moment, this was an epiphany for me that because I wasn't on a 9-day vacation, I could just kind of go down to Paris. I had friends to stay with. I could sort of live there. And this is the real Paris. This is not outside of Paris. I think of this when people say is in an authentic dish. For example, Rebecca, you're Hungarian. Paprika comes from Ottoman Empire and Arab trade. It is a New World spice. Chilies are New World. So what counts as authentic? This is authentically Paris. There is no this Paris is not really there. In fact, it looks a little suspicious because there's almost no human beings at all, right? So this is Paris, not this. As a friend of mine told me who'd lived in Europe for a few years, an Irish friend who lived in France, he said, if you can buy a postcard of it, why don't you just do that? Why are you taking pictures? Because that's not the real place. And I'm like, oh, that's true, because that's what we learn in class. Okay. So the culture itself is the destination here. All right. So if you would, I want to show you just an example from popular culture, the show Everybody Loves Raymond. It actually is based on a real experience that, if you know, he played Ray Barone, a sports reporter, lives on Long Island with his family. His parents live across the street. And in real life, the producer, Phil Rosenthal, asked him what he was going to do for a summer vacation. He said, "I don't know. I guess I'll go to the shore." It's what they call the beach. And he goes, "Why don't you go somewhere?" He doesn't want to travel. So they used real life experiences on the show and they made a two-parter about Italy. Marie, Ray's mother, saves all her money up, sends the family. They stay with an aunt in her house in a town just 30 minutes outside of Rome. And you get to see in 2 episodes, in 45 minutes, you get to see Ray evolve from tourist, as well, spoiler alert, into at least a traveler, if not a trusted guest. You're going to see this. This is pretty good, and this is based on real life. That's why the show did well. Phil Rosenthal said we took real experiences our staff, our actors had, turned them into real plots. And if you'll forgive me here, feel free to say anything in the chat. It's going to take me a second to click in and out. That's unfortunately how Zoom works here. It's not really playing on here. I have to go to the link. So hold on real tight. Let's see if I can get this to work okay. All right. Let me get the ad pass. Just entertain yourselves. And I'll click into the screen share. All right. Let's see. So forgive me for just a second. All right. Here we go. Make sure that's sharing. Yeah, that's good. So you can see, let me get back out. Excuse me just a second here. Let me get back to the slides. Yeah. You can see they're starting out. Ray's got a cold. He's not having it. Like a lot of people, he is a typical American. We have some Europeans here today. It must be a shock to that most people have maybe 2 weeks off a year. He didn't want to spend the whole 2 weeks here. Look at this. This is not a hotel room. This is Marie's aunt's place. And there's Marie, his wife, his brother, and their three kids, plus Marie, his mother, and Frank, her husband, all in this small Italian home, right? It's playing out just right. Okay. So I want you to just move along here. We only have just a few videos here, but I thought this was really the best representation. As we go through this, and it's fast because it's TV, it's 2 episodes, 45 minutes. But I want you to notice that it really does play out kind of in this real time here of only being in Italy in this small town. Again, they're not in Rome, they're outside of Rome. Tourists aren't going here. And it only has 2 weeks, but I want you to notice how Ray is starting to turn. He's explored. We kind of skipped that a little bit, but he's moving to that middle one. You see them right there at the bottom. What is daily life like here? So his family is split up in the day. He's waiting for his mother to get some items to cook dinner that evening. But I want you to notice how Ray now, how he's engaging the culture. And pardon me again, I have to, you know, click out of this. Just forgive me here for just a second. And let me, oops, hold on just a second. Maximize the best of sound and quality as I can. Here we go. So, isn't that nice? So it is condensed a little bit. This could be actually what could happen in real life, right? This is, let me turn off the sound here. Okay. Notice what Ray's doing here. He's not simply observing the things and complaining. By the way, complains later in a very European style that the shower is really just an attachment in the tub. Americans tend to be the reverse now. We're switching out tubs for showers only, right? That it can be cold, it's small. By his sort of lifestyle, maybe a little dirty. And what's interesting too is, of course, he is Italian. The actor is Italian, and so is the character, Italian American. And yet he's seeing what the real world is like there. He just turns the corner to a little pizza stand that no tourist is going to, maybe has never been to, right? So what we see is what I'll demonstrate on here. I consider this being adaptable and portable. What's your smooth way through the day in general, right here in Austin, Texas, or wherever you are? But also what you do when you're abroad. He didn't let things get in the way. He realized having the cold didn't matter. And if you've traveled, I know I have, I've been sick, gotten sick when I'm traveling. It's not fun. But you also learn things. For example, I was in Dublin, Ireland, and something didn't agree with me. And I thought, oh, I haven't had it in a while, but let me go see at the pharmacy. I looked for a green cross and went to the pharmacy to look for Pepto-Bismol. Well, it turns out bismuth, which it's made of, is they don't have it there. In fact, it's illegal. I don't know why. But I ended up talking to a pharmacist who had worked in New York City. And I had a nice discussion, and I got the equivalent, the Irish equivalent. And I learned about the culture by talking to a pharmacist. That is not in the guidebooks, right? These are the things you adapt to. So he's hungry, he adapts, he finds just around the corner some pizza. Somebody kicks the soccer ball to them, the kids. I mean, that wouldn't ordinarily happen every day, but they just happen to be there, right? It's adapting and being portable in the moment to be a traveler. Okay, good. Now, if we go to the next step here, oh, let's see, Vera, I had a great experience in urgent clinic in Hawaii. Oh, awesome cultural experience when we had a car accident in St. Lucia. Oh, goodness. So I'm going to guess, Vera, that these are both, were unpleasant at the time. But looking back, pearls of wisdom only form behind us, not in front of us. But it became a cultural experience, right? It's not going to be in the guidebook. By the way, folks, I want you to go to urgent care in Hawaii. I'm sorry to hear that, but right, that's how you know about the place, right? You're part of it because they go there too, right? That's part of their experience. Because what we have here, people have other places. In fact, a lot of what we're going to talk about, for example, that everyone eats and drinks, but it becomes dining and toasting, right? The cultural experience is part of why you're there. Okay, so let's just take a look at what we're getting to Samantha Brown now, especially in her shows about places she loves. What she likes to do is to hang out in the same place. Rick Steves would never recommend this. You don't have time. You got to do everything once. You got to skip some things because you don't have time. You have 9 days. So what she says is that no, you go to say a cafe. And I did this generated image. I love it because the person on the left has three hands. I just love that because you're trying to do multiple things at once and it's a good representation. So you're just another customer. But if you go back the second day, they recognize you. That's odd. I know you don't live here, you're not from here, but oddly enough, you've come to the same place. You must be staying around the corner. And then it becomes familiar until the point there's actually a connection and you may have a discussion. Now, I would say unfortunately, with urgent care or those sort of things or getting Pepto-Bismol, it's a little more urgent. You have a discussion because it's something you need. But in this casual sort of way, Samantha Brown becomes a traveler here. So small routines create familiarity. Familiarity creates relationships, and relationships create trust. Now, this is not a trusted guest yet, but it's building on that path. And if you'll forgive me, the videos are fairly close together. We have another one at the end. So if you'll pardon me here, I'd like to show you a brief clip of Places to Love when she's in Hong Kong, how she goes to a breakfast restaurant. So hold on just a second, if you would. Pardon me here while I click out and click in. Let's see, hold on just a second. Let's see if we're lucky enough to skip an ad.
When I'm in a destination.
Very good. Pardon me just a second. Here we go. There.
For more than 3 or 4 days, one thing I really love to do in order to slow my travels down is to create a ritual. I like to find what's going to be my place, and I'm going to return to it often. And people think I'm crazy for doing this because, like, oh my gosh, we've got to go to different places every single meal, and every meal's got to change our life, right? And I just don't believe in that. So I always find the place that I'm going to begin my day at, have breakfast.
This is Shui Wa. It's what's called a tea restaurant here in Hong Kong. And with many locations around the city, it is the opposite of one of a kind. And yet, it's a reliable local spot with little wait where one can enjoy a good meal.
What you see here is Hong Kong on a plate. Literally the history of Hong Kong. So we've got some beef noodles for breakfast, but with the beef noodles come scrambled eggs and a nice buttered roll, and of course, a cup of tea. And I love that. Travel requires like incessant thinking, right? What am I gonna do today? How am I gonna get there? Is it gonna rain? Do I need to bring sunscreen? You know, I leave in 3 days. Did my upgrades come through? And like, I just want my brain to stop. And the way that I do that is I return to a place that's familiar, and it gives me comfort, and then I just relax. And I get to eat noodles with a fork.
So there we go. Very nice. You notice that is not going to show up in that's not going to be in a guidebook, probably, because there's nothing particular. She's not recommending a particular place. She's simply saying it's the place around the corner. And in fact, you know, you can even do that as you travel in the US. You can tell if someone has been in New York long enough, if they're staying there, if they know where their corner bodega is, right? Do you know where it is? Yeah, it's 2 blocks down. That means you've been here at least 3 days, right? So this way she can slow down. And we're gonna just look at this a little bit because what we're talking about here is this familiarity means that your senses are not overwhelmed. You've got some consistency. Now, as a human being, of course you do, because you eat, drink, and you walk, and you sleep. But the consistency is in sort of the food that you recognize. By the way, a lot of American culture is based on this. The reason that the man who started Holiday Inn, back when he started it, there were roadside inns, and none of them had anything necessarily in common. But he wanted a consistency and a familiarity of cleanliness, of comfort, and things they expect to see. By the way, more in recent terms, I would say the clear winner in that regard is Starbucks, which we're going to look at in a minute. There's a consistency to it. You know that each one is a little different, but the beverages are going to be the same. In fact, somehow they filter the water. They all sort of taste the same, regardless of where you go. Here's a place called, this is one of my favorite places ever. It's in Kyoto. It's a chain called Moku Moku. And it's like a bento box cafeteria. So each bite is very special and it's very fresh. And I went twice, and I felt guilty the second time. I'm like, I've only got about 3 days in Kyoto. Why don't I try another place? But I couldn't help myself, and I'm glad I did it because the familiarity allowed me to enjoy the bites of food even more, to try new things, and to even kind of wave at somebody who worked there because they'd said, "Oh, he was just here yesterday." Why did I go there? Well, it was attached to the hotel. I didn't know. I didn't find it in the guidebook. Okay, so I mentioned Starbucks. This is one of the things. Starbucks is around the world. There are people complain about it. You'll notice there's a style of Starbucks, and yet they're all kind of the same, but all different. And one of my rules is when I travel, I have to sit in a Starbucks for 90 minutes without any electronics because my senses can be calmed by the fact that it's a familiar presence of Starbucks, but my senses are titillated by the things that are different in that location. So I'll give you an example. I was in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I noticed the police, they were in heavy gear, and they sort of stood around like this. But then I was also once in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and went to Starbucks. I should say the Starbucks. For some reason, there's only one in Puerto Rico, and it's near the harbor in San Juan. And the police officers were dressed a little more less heavily, and of course, partly for the climate. But I noticed that they hugged each other. And now, see, I don't know, wouldn't have necessarily noticed that had I had been in a place that I'm trying to notice why is the wall that color? Why is the food different? Right? The familiarity, of course, you're never going to tell anybody. Guess what? I went to Starbucks. Why would you do that? Go to a local coffee shop. Yes, but it's full of people because it is local. But for me, you can flatten your senses a little and let the things stand out that are different. And that's the advantage of that. Okay, so let's move ahead a little, just real quickly. We'll get into our countries here. I'll keep in mind there's a thing called the half-mile rule. I've also heard it called the three-block rule, where wherever you're staying, probably where Samantha Brown is staying, this place is probably no more than 3 blocks. She came across it. She comes back to Hong Kong. She repeats it and goes there. Now, you may try new things. You go to the tourist cafe, the menu's in English. There's pictures of the items, and it's fine. It may fill the bill if you want a quick breakfast before a day of touring or whatever you're going to do. But if you walk a half mile, you get to see where other people go. There are probably no tourists. First of all, it maybe help your pocketbook a little to be a little less expensive, a little bit more experimental. You may not understand the language. You may actually have to do something you don't want to do, and that's point at the menu and try to guess, right? So you walk a few blocks and you get a very different experience. Here is one for me. I was in Piccadilly Circus in London, kind of like their Times Square, and it was kind of noisy. And I'm like, I've had it with noise for a couple of days. So I just took a little walk down a side street. I'm a big walker. I love walking places. And I found this little deli and I got ordered a sandwich. I looked like the first customer all day, not only the only tourist, but the only person. And I started to grab the sandwich, and the fellow said, "Wait, hold on." And he cut it in half and he put garnish around it on the plate. He was proud of his artwork in creating a nice lunch. And that is a memorable experience. I really was part of London. Now, we could get into certain terms like autonomy, synecdoche, these rhetorical terms, that one small thing can represent the larger thing. But that's what happens. That's what happens. You go to one cafe, you've sort of been to all of them in a sense because you've engaged the local culture. All right. So one thing you might think about, just be thinking about it for the rest of our experience here today. Oh, Vera, you had a similar experience, a tiny bakery in Naples. Oh, that sounds good. Some reason when I just hear the word bakery, I can smell bread. Great. So think about a favorite trip. What do you remember most? Here's the thing. Think about, was it a landmark that you saw, or was it a conversation you had? Right? Just be thinking about that a little bit if you would. What are the most memorable things? It's sort of the difference between a travel guide and a travel log. Paul Theroux only writes sort of travel logs. Rick Steves only writes travel guides, except his recent on the Hippie Trail when he was his very first trip as a teenager with a friend going to the Hippie Trail through Afghanistan all the way to India. It's on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's kind of unusual for him because it's a travel log, not a travel guide. Okay. Adam Gopnik, he's a writer for The New Yorker. He is from Montreal. He lives in New York. And he wrote a book called Paris to the Moon. And it was about, he was there with his wife and his young son. I think he was like 5 years old, 6 years old. And his wife was pregnant, was about to have their daughter. And this was an experience for him because he spoke French. He's from Montreal. But he really wasn't fluent in the sense that a Parisian might be. And he said a city should not just be beautiful, it should be full. In fact, we have this contrast. When he was going to move back to New York, he said, well, Paris is beautiful but not full, and New York is full but not beautiful. In other words, the things that delight your senses, that awaken you, are the things that are beautiful, but you don't have that solid sense of every day of, you know, exactly how the store works around the corner or the market, that your best friend lives down the street, et cetera. So he kind of complains about having to go back to New York. Now, I thought about this a few months ago. A friend of mine in Paris, Jean-Claude, his favorite place in the world is Thailand. So he goes as much as he can. And he posted online, he goes, oh, what a shame. The trip's over. I got to fly back to Paris. And I said, Jean-Claude, you're the only person I know that would complain about returning to Paris. When we have Adam Gopnik here, for him, that's his beautiful place. For Jean-Claude, it is Thailand, right? So you have a balance of those, but you can't have everything. There is this mix of 2/3 of one, 1/3 of the other, et cetera. Now, I do like to see sights. I will admit there's nothing like seeing certain things. A view from Mauna Loa in Hawaii, the world's tallest mountain, to be able to stand over clouds when it's sunset, there's nothing like it. That's beautiful. But the fullness is going to a night market in Taipei, Taiwan, which I did last year. I just love that. I could do that all the time. And I love it. Oh, subways too. I collect subways. I love the experience of how people interact or don't interact. Okay. So let's move on here, if you would, to this. Paul Theroux, the travel writer, told me, so do you have any travel advice? He goes, go where they don't want you. So go down a path that's unexpected, right? You already kind of know that. His traveling is with kayaks. He travels differently. Okay. So just real quickly, I'm going to skip over here just a little so we can get to our countries more specifically, but this is vital to what we're talking about regardless of the country. If we go back 250 years or so to America's own founding, we have a big contrast between John Adams, who became the first vice president, became the second president, and Benjamin Franklin, who was not in an elected position, but is more admired and more known today, really, than John Adams. Adams he was a lawyer. He was very going down the letter of the law, but Franklin was more the spirit of the law. He believed that you build relationships by embracing customs and offering new perspectives. So if you would, there was with Paul Giamatti playing John Adams here. They're meeting in Versailles. This is right after American independence it's like 1789. And Franklin at this point is the unofficial ambassador to France. He's admired. He's called Dr. Franklin. He never actually went to college. They made plates with his pictures on it because they had completely different ways of engaging the culture. And I'd like to show you just a very brief clip here of, and it's a great miniseries if you haven't seen it, of the clash here between Adams and Franklin.
Is it your purpose to destroy everything we've accomplished? To engineer the recall of the fleet under Admiral D'Estaing? Or is this some new kind of...
Pardon the quality there. Sometimes Zoom does throttle.
Diplomatic initiative, the direct insult followed by the petulant whine. What are you thinking of? A good diplomat, Mr. Adams, observes much, acts little, and speaks softly.
The Comte de Vergennes means to keep his hand beneath our chin, to prevent us from drowning, but not to keep our heads above the water.
You learn nothing, Mr. Adams, if you continue to exasperate and antagonize these people.
As I did in Philadelphia, and we declared independence, you'll recall.
In Philadelphia, we negotiated independence.
Well, you may be as patient and accommodating as you like, Doctor. But for myself, I will not voluntarily put on the chains of France while I am struggling to throw off those of Great Britain.
All right. Now, I want you to notice, I love freezing it on this scene. Look as Adam walks away. He looks just like the court of Louis XVI here, right? In this dress, he dresses as French. Now, in other sessions, I have covered this more. I don't in this because we have to pick and choose. But I'd like you to notice here that Adams wanted to look like one of these upper level French. In contrast, however, you can kind of see from this picture, Benjamin Franklin did not do that. He actually wore fur. Now, remember, fur is different than we're not talking about minks or protest about that. We're talking about backwoods people who the only warm clothing they had were the hides and furs of the animals they could shoot. So Franklin did this. He dressed. He didn't try to pretend he was an American, but he learned some French. Apparently, he wasn't very good at it. But Adams didn't know any French. So I want you to notice that particular quote. The good diplomat observes much, acts little, and speaks softly. That's how Franklin was able to insinuate, you might say, if that is a proper term, into French society and help with quite a pretty phenomenal ongoing relationship with France. In fact, America's relationship with France today is partially based in that. That's pretty beautiful. Now, Adams was well-intentioned, but he was going by the letter of the law. Franklin realized there was something beyond that. He didn't try to pretend to be something he was not. As I tell my students often, if there's one trait you can learn to get through this, everything better, is patience. And Franklin was infinitely patient. Okay, and we're going to end with Franklin, by the way. So, of course, why sister cities matter: cultural exchange, educational partnerships, business partnerships, lifelong friendships. You already know this. Just a reminder. I love it when I did this picture because wouldn't it be interesting if the only name you went by is what city you're from? Okay. So we want to look ahead a little here. Let's go ahead. Our first three are going to connect together. You notice two are on the same continent and one is across the world, but they have something in common, but also distinctions. And that's going to be very important here as Anglo countries in the world. They're going to distinguish themselves a little bit too. So first of all, we might call this the Anglo business mindset that is for the UK, but also further from that into Ireland and Australia. It tends to be more direct communication. That is, what you say is what you mean. There's more rules and procedures, individual responsibility, and it's results driven. Let's dig into that a little bit. So let's start with the UK, and of course our sister city there is Manchester. If you allow me, not only do I love islands, but I love nightlife in a city. So my title slides are of the night view of cities, assuming they have a nightlife. Okay, so this is a tough country to cover for us, believe it or not, because the country and the culture you're closest to are often the most confounding because they are so similar. I mentioned Starbucks. What if you were in a Starbucks and you couldn't tell looking out the window what country you're in? And let's just say all Starbucks opted that for some reason their first language on the board behind the counter is in English. Where am I? You'd have to look for fine details. And this is one issue about the United Kingdom is it is such a close ally and has been since the revolution, you might say, but before, that it can be the most confounding because we take for granted that it's going to be the same as the US. And of course, it's not. There's a lot of difference. Notice as we evolve here, we see that one of the biggest things the UK is defined by class, tradition, and empire. But in the US, we wanted to forge a new identity. If we look at the outlook, we value doing things now. It's about speed, efficiency, and in Britain, it's about doing things the right way. So we have a clash here. And I like to use that. I think the best image I could think of is if you saw Polar Express, you might say an early CGI film. Tom Hanks plays the conductor, And the animated character is more or less Tom Hanks. However, notice his eyes, they called it zombie eyes. There's a thing called uncanny valley, which means if something is 95% similar to something, when you animate it, for example, but it's not 100%, that we feel most uncomfortable because we're not confused that Bugs Bunny is a cartoon rabbit. But we have a problem if someone kind of looks human. The princess originally in Shrek was going to be more human-like, and they changed it because of the uncanny valley. So this is a problem that Britain seems really familiar, but if you're there, there are things that are a little bit different, not a lot. You already know to learn bowing, for example, if you would go to Japan. But you go, oh, Britain, they're just like us. We'll just go there. So let's take a look at that. We feel a little bit unsettled because it's similar, but not all the way there. This is where things are going to clash. I like when they talk about queuing or standing in line, or as they say in New York, standing on line. Well, they're used to doing that. We don't like it. We will break in line and that sort of thing, right? There's a different sense of time, of patience, etc., that distinguish enough that can get you in trouble and make you bump out of the culture, just like John Adams. So there are a lot of contrast, rich tradition, but modern innovation, polite and reserved, but also warm and witty. You'll never hear more cutting jokes. I've never heard any more cutting jokes than being in Britain. If you get a chance to see a comedy show there that's not on TV, you're not going to believe it. So there's two sides to the British in this regard. Now, first of all, we should talk about, be careful with our terminology. What is British? What is English? I left some out here. I think Isle of Wight, et cetera, is not in here. And there's some that are a couple islands that are semi-autonomous. But Americans have a problem. They say English, British. The problem is, well, there is no adjective form for the United Kingdom. There isn't one. Because, for example, if you're from Northern Ireland, you're in the United Kingdom, but you're not British because you're not on the island of Great Britain. It's problematic. Also notice at the top, British Isles versus British Islands. The British Islands incorporate things off of Great Britain that are part of the UK, but don't include Ireland, but that is part of British Isles. Oh, this is tough. This is tough. You just have to be careful that you don't make assumptions. There is no, King Charles is not the King of England. He's the King of the United Kingdom, for example. So be careful about words like Anglo. That can be a problem here too. It means Anglophone generally. But most people in the US who speak English are not actually of English origin. In fact, German is the most common ethnicity in the US, and no one speaks German except for the Pennsylvania Dutch. So be really careful. Be really careful. And it's particularly a problem a little bit in Wales, more in Scotland, and very much so in Ireland. You have to be very careful about terms you use. Now, that doesn't mean monitor all your language, but be careful about who you're referring to. By the way, the equivalent is when the British call all Americans Yankees. Well, if you're from the South, you're not going to take that well because you're not a Yankee. And according to them, you are. But then the problem is it gets in the way of that good conversation you're trying to have and establish, except the conversation itself about that, if it's 5 minutes, could be valuable. Okay, so let's look at a few things about the United Kingdom here. First of all, of course, we always want to start with the very first thing people see about you before you say hello and shake hands. And it's important is attire. If any of you teach, you know this. I have students who I had a student told me they don't even own anything but shorts. But I think they're going to have a tough time in life because the first thing people notice about you is your attire. So, as in all our sessions, we see that the British tend to dress, the international business attire. They actually can be a little bit more formal. So, as I always point out, if you're not sure, talk to someone in your team or there before you go. And always err on the side of formality because you can take a tie off, but you're probably not going to put one on. You can take a jacket off, but you're probably not going to put one on. If it is more casual, find out, and you can still look pretty snappy, pretty snazzy with these casual items. The same with women, and styles change all the time. I think in some ways they changed during the pandemic, and we're still seeing the results from that. For the first time in our history, for example, ties are no longer narrowing and widening. They tend to be about this size or a little narrower, which is great if you're ever shopping for ties. You don't have to buy any more. You can just use the ones you have unless you want a new one. But here's the thing. This is the first thing people notice. You go, why does that matter? Well, it's the same as Benjamin Franklin. He dressed as an American. There was not an international style the way there is today, a business style. This means that you care about your appearance and you're willing to interface with those expectations. Greetings tend to be a bit more formal. One odd one, if you were not a native English speaker, you may have always been confused by what do you say when you say, how do you do? Your response is, how do you do? It's not saying, how are you? It is a rhetorical question. It means absolutely nothing except something you say the first time you meet somebody. By the way, if you re-meet them and say it, that would be rude because it's saying, I don't remember you. So you only say it to one other person one time in your whole life, unless you apologize and I'm sorry, I didn't remember I met you. You don't say pleased to meet you because you don't know them yet and it's not a pleasure. Or for Southern, we abbreviate it. We just say pleasure, pleasure. Shake hands with everyone. This is very similar to American. You go, why does that matter? Well, each culture we cover has very different notions about the length and firmness of a handshake and whether or not you use eye contact. Believe it or not, in some, it's considered threatening to have eye contact. But in most of our cultures, European cultures, it's considered weak if you don't have a nice firm handshake, and it seems dishonest if you don't look them in the eye. So just notice people in front of you. If there's a line of people, just don't be first. Just watch what other people do. If you are the only one in the room with your partner, British partner, allow them to extend their hand first. That's perfectly fine. Now, one of the things we have, you do have to be careful in some cultures, whether you are male and the person is female, because in some cultures, a woman has to extend her hand first. Of course, that is no longer true in the US, but be aware, because you are the outsider, it's perfectly fine to allow a man or a woman to extend their hand first, and that's just fine. Small talk is fine, but of course, as in the US, stay away from politics, money, religion, and sex. And use some of the terms they use: tuxedo, cheers, toilet, believe it or not, and take tea, right? Okay, visiting homes. We always want to make sure we get these nuances right because they vary culture to culture. Small gifts, just like in the US, certain things to avoid white lilies because those are funereal. Cards, I do look this up all the time, despite QR codes and all, and there's one on this card. A good, nice fabric like cotton bond business cards are fairly inexpensive, easy to get, and they represent you and your organization and more indirectly your country, your culture. Make sure to have a nice set made, make sure everything's spelled right. And this is the physical manifestation of you that you hand to someone. Hand it to, you may not get one from everyone. My recommendation of bring 2 metal card cases, one to collect cards and one with your cards. And you'll never worry about bending a corner. It's really unprofessional to bend their card or to hand them a bent card. And by the way, if some of your data changes and you have to mark it on the card, please get some new cards because that looks unprofessional. It looks like you're fly by night. Okay. The British are more formal, as you may guess, in setting up business meetings. So here's the deal. Be on time. And if you're not sure of transportation, here's the thing. Always arrive early because there's somewhere to sit in a hallway or waiting room. And you get to cool down a little bit, gather your thoughts, look out the window. Because remember, people don't really notice a difference. I teach public speaking. They don't notice a difference between flop sweat and heat sweat. If you're running, even if it's cold weather, and you get sweaty, it makes you look nervous. So just get there early. You don't have to be early to everything, but if you have a meeting, get there a half hour early and just sit. If there's nowhere to sit, walk around the block, find a cafe or a bench somewhere nearby. Prepare well in advance. So more formal than here. Written contracts are binding. And in fact, that idea of a written contract being binding is where we get our idea. It's British judicial law. It's where Americans got it from. For dining, of course, you arrive a little bit. Never show up when the invitation's there. The host or hostess is still preparing. The guest honors at the head of the table. Usually it's in a business entertaining, so a lunch in a restaurant or pub. That's a great way to do things. It's the middle of the day. You're not wondering when the evening ends because everyone needs to get back to work. Lunches are great. If you're paying, by the way, a little hint, as you know, lunches tend to be a little less expensive, but also more to the point, they're less formal, they're more casual. Oh yeah, I forgot this. One I want to show you. Let me see if we have a moment here. I think I will skip this. I was going to show you a brief video. If you know who William Hanson is, he's probably the most known British etiquette expert. Some of it is just, for us, is hilarious. How to eat a banana with a knife and fork. But he actually shows, if you just look him up, how to go to a tea. So like with every culture, food and drink, which are part of your organism's need for nutrition, have been made into art forms, but also into cultural events and therefore social events. He will show you how to go to a British tea. Now, last year I was in Victoria, British Columbia. It's on Vancouver Island. And there's a place there couldn't make it to, but they're known for their afternoon teas. It's the most apparently Britishy place in Canada. It's beautiful, flower gardens. You wouldn't believe it, but if you haven't been. But this is something you can't guess, how you were to take a small sandwich or a treat from the trays. This is something you want to look up in advance. You don't have to go as much as William Hanson does, but you want to feel like you fit in. Remember, we only notice bumps in the road. You have a nice flight somewhere. Somebody says, "How was it?" You go, "We had turbulence," but you didn't mention that you flew 5 miles up in the air and made it across the country in 3 hours. We only notice bumps in the road. So if you have some odd manner at the table, that's what's noticed, not the 95% that's correct. It's only the 5% that's off. Does it matter? Only in that you're trying to get to conversation. So remember, our training here today, all our days, is not about what to talk about when you're in the same room. It's so that you can be in the same room to get the conversation going. That's the point. That was Franklin's point. He wasn't telling Adams what to say. He was telling him how to say it. Okay. Women in the UK, there's still a bit of a problem with the old boy network, but a lot of women in the UK do have managerial and executive positions more than in other countries. Generally, women from the US won't have problem conducting business, same professionalism, etc. One thing odd is our only country that notes this. Don't be offended if somebody calls you sweetie or darling or the Welsh flower, because these are common and not demeaning. I don't think we have a problem knowing that, because Southerners, a server, a waitress may call you, "What are you going to have, sweetie?" It doesn't mean anything, right? "What are you going to have, honey?" Yeah, it's not, don't take it as sexist or too familiar, right? It's just endearing, if that helps. Okay, why Manchester? Of course, a lot of bands come from there. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the third biggest city in Britain after London and Birmingham, and right before Sheffield. Oasis, the Smiths are there, New Order, Joy Division, etc. The Bee Gees, that's a funny one because they moved around. They're known as Football City. They're known very well, Manchester United, Manchester City, which is funny because even I knew that, and I don't know a lot about soccer. Coronation Street is filmed there. And Andy Burnham, former great Manchester mayor, became UK's prime minister, just became the prime minister. So, okay, quick look at Ireland here, and especially Limerick. Now, one thing is to put up front, it is insulting to the Irish, as you can imagine, to be thought of as English. I was talking to somebody the other day about the band from the 80s that's still around, U2, and they were mentioning English bands. I said, "They're not English." And they said, "They speak English." No. Oh, Ted Lasso. Oh, very good. Oh, thank you, John. Thank you. Yeah, I remember that. I think it's just in this new season, if I'm not mistaken. Good. Thanks, T. Okay. So just be aware, it's very different. It's still controversial because, of course, of Northern Ireland, variously considered part of Ireland and of the United Kingdom. One island, two currencies. Everything, by the way, in Ireland has two currencies on it, the euro for Ireland and the pound for UK, because it's distributed across the island and they don't want to print it twice, I guess. So you'll see two prices on everything. Be careful. They're Irish, they're not English. Um, so handshakes, the same as we've already seen. You'll see we have less with Ireland and with Australia because we're basing it off our home country here, you might say, of the UK, and how it compares. You see at the bottom. Shake hand. Oh, it's a little warmer and more relaxed than the UK. As they say, it's conservative with a touch of tweed. And I found that one of the things when I was there, it was winter. I brought like a Columbia outdoor coat, and everyone around me was wearing a wool coat. Right. So in the winter, a little bit more of this slight formality, and you just feel better. You can walk down the street. It doesn't look odd. It doesn't look like you're going to them. It looks like you're going to go on a hiking expedition. It didn't occur to me till I got there. Look it up. See what people are wearing. Okay. So again, it's more relationship driven, flexible, consensus oriented compared to the UK. There is a warmth to it that is different than the British. So even as you compare yourself to the British, you also compare the Irish to the British. Be careful about those slight nuances. One of the big things about Ireland that's very particular to them, we cover untranslatable words in class. Students make videos that they find them to explain them in 7 to 9 minutes. There's something you cannot miss in Britain. In Ireland, and that is a pub. There's no equivalent. It's not a bar. Families go, they have food. There's mod and trad, modern and traditional music. Here's Temple Bar, one of the best places. By the way, it has nothing to do with bars. That's just the name of it. It has bars, but in Dublin, there's nothing like it by and rounds. And in fact, they have a word called crack. Here is the untranslatable. It's pronounced like crack. And there are levels. If I'm not mistaken, there might be 9 levels, but I have 5 here of how good an evening is. And it's rated on levels in the pub. This is pretty good. And you notice the number 5, lifelong bonds, unforgettable. It's beautiful. There can be negative crack too. That's when people felt excluded. Not every night's going to go great. Okay. So there's good food, genuine generosity, warm welcomes. There's some pretty extraordinary food in Ireland, despite it's the stereotype of potatoes and that sort of thing. Guinness is a little controversial because it's actually owned by a British company now. They're not Irish anymore, but of course they are of Irish origin. Women in business do pretty well. Teamwork is valued over hierarchy, and women lead across business, technology, and government. Of course, Ireland is still a continuing, becoming more of a tech-oriented country. Some nice things about Limerick, home of the Cranberries. It formed in 1989. Frank McCourt is from there. And this should be no surprise. Ireland has more poets and writers per capita than the other country on the planet. And I like this too. They were founded by the Vikings in 812. So there are, what's that? They're over 1,200 years old. That's pretty amazing. All right, let's take a look at Australia. We're going across the world here, ladies and gentlemen. But culturally, we're not going to be that far from the UK, if you'll take a look here. You'll notice far more casual. In fact, it's interesting. I like to compare Australia to Hawaii. The business wear in Hawaii is an aloha shirt, what we call a Hawaiian shirt. Unless you're going to something extremely formal, that's what you wear every day. That's standard in in Hawaii. And the styles have changed like this in Australia as well. But they're still, compared to the UK, it's less formal, more direct, results oriented, it's faster. One of the big, I like to pull in one cultural thing. In Australia, there's tall poppy. This is a thing like in Denmark and in Northern Europe, Nordic Europe, tall poppy syndrome. No bragging. Tall poppies get cut off. That's tall poppy syndrome. So you have to be careful because there's a deep, deep sense of egalitarianism that no one is better than someone else, the opposite of the class system in the UK. Dining is casual, etc. It's more relaxed. First names are common, just as the island. It's an island culture, even though it's a continent. There's no rush, and this is typical. You'll just spend. There's not a lot of formality. No one is seated before someone else. Women do pretty well in business. There is a little bit of a gender pay gap, but notice that over a third of leadership roles are held by women in Australia, which is pretty good. Adelaide, our sister city here, Sia is from there. There's one of her most famous outfits where you can't tell if it's the front of her head or the back. A beautiful city in the south. It's green and livable, beautiful. Now, just some quick differences. You have to keep an idea of Anglo as we go to Germanic, and then we'll move to a more of a Romance culture. Technically, it's a Latin culture, but that applies South America, so that it isn't. So we're going to move into this Germanic style here of Germany and especially Koblenz. It's a little more formal. It's precise. It's prepared. It's conservative attire, dark colors, the usual thing. Prepare, be on time. So in our Anglo cultures, it's friendly first, but in Germany, it's more formal first. And of course, feel free for any of those of you out there from Germany to correct me on these, which I love because I love how you can look up stuff and visit and still get it wrong. Be on time, plan ahead, use names and titles. Remember, always err on the side of formality. One of my favorite things is that you can actually say, Herr Professor Dr. Schmidt, which is roughly in English, right? Mr. Professor Dr. Smith, because Mr. is just the title in front of everyone. Professor is their professional position, and doctor, it could be an MD, but it could be a PhD, is their credential, right? It's the only place I know that you could actually have 3 titles. Start with the title. If somebody wants you to go informal, that's fine. But if you start informal, that's not a good way to go because it's insulting to assume familiarity. Let's see. Again, multiple titles. Be precise, as our design is here. It's a Bauhaus design, by the way. Similar in Czech Republic. Good. So structured, be on time, relationship focused in Anglo countries, process focused in Germany. So again, err on the side of formality. See what other people are doing when things are needed and follow suit. Literally, follow their suit. Dining, wait to be seated, etc. Hands, keep hands visible. This is one of the biggest ones for Americans because we're one of the few cultures where it's rude to keep your hands above the table. You keep them in your lap. But in most cultures, it's rude to keep your hands in your lap. At least the wrists are on the table. Just notice what other people are doing and you'll be fine. Remember, you're never anywhere to eat or drink. You're there to dine and to toast. A quick hint, I always say, bring a snack bar, protein bar or something, have it a half hour before dinner because you're not there because you're hungry. And that's going to get in the way. You don't want bodily urges in the way of fine conversation. So we have, say, Germany compared to Anglo countries, some similarities. Germany has a work-life balance, but there's flexible work in Anglo countries. Britain is kind of almost literally a stepping stone, physical, literal, but sort of culturally a stepping stone between the US and the continent of Europe, which Germany represents here. We're definitely not work-life balance. Germany definitely is, and Britain's kind of in the middle. Koblenz, beautiful city, a lot of Riesling wines. There's a 2,000-year-old original settlement here from the Romans. And of course, what it's mostly known for is a lot of Rhine cruises. Now we're going to move quickly to, pardon my delay here, but quickly to France and to Italy. Our third set are our Romance countries. Now, I want to show you a communication barometer here real quick. For our countries, what we have here is at the top, the most precise is Germany, and we're going to move down all the way to Italy. You see, these are slightly out of order now because Germany is the most precise. The next three are Anglo, but in decreasing order of flexibility. One way to look at it is how close can you stand to somebody in an elevator? The further down on the scale, the closer you can stand without it being uncomfortable. Okay, France, an Alger. Oh, it's a little different. Style is everything. Handshake. Allow your French colleague to start. And don't forget the kiss, la bise. Bigger cities twice, 3 times, like in Belgium, and where people have more time, supposedly 4 times. In Corsica, it's 5 times. So you're going to be there all day. Dress, of course. Paris is a fashion capital. If you don't have like a nice suit, really think about it. Why not leave some space in your suitcase and buy one when you get there? If you're there long enough, you could have it tailored. Wouldn't that be nice? And be quite a compliment. You could wear it the next time you're there. Always address people by titles, monsieur, mademoiselle, and madame. Even if you walk into a shop, you never say bonjour. You say bonjour, madame. It's rude not to end the sentence with the person you're talking to. Communicate with confidence, be punctual, speak with purpose. And by the way, as we're going here, I'm sorry that it's getting a little close to our end time. If you have questions along the way here, feel free to go ahead and ask in the chat line if you would. Trust comes through relationships, fine dining, fine drinking, dressing the part, taking your time. You're not going to do it on a 3-day weekend. Professionalism, and this is the only country I've done this with, even in what we consider informal communication, you should still be polite and more formal in emails, phone calls, and written materials. Arrive on time, involve conversation. You're not in a rush, but you're not there to eat or drink. You're there to dine and toast. By the way, never, ever be drunk. Sip. Drink your water and sip. Don't do that. Fattier foods help take some longer wine to process. You do not want to be drunk. John, there's little flexibility, and appointments are made with plenty of time. Yep, there you go. I kind of like that. At least it's on my calendar and I can look forward to it. Okay. Women are entrepreneurs and leaders. There is no doubt about that. Simone Weil said, quality is not just an idea, it's a value. And of course, here we have Angers. A lot of beautiful things to see. Okay, very quickly, if you would, and again, I apologize for getting this toward the end. Italy, and of course, friendship and soon to be, hopefully, sister city, Florence. We have our most relaxed of our 6 countries, as you can imagine. Roughly, the way to think about it is, the further south you are in Europe, the more relaxed it is. Even where I lived, I'm in the French part of Belgium. It's different than the Flemish part because it is a Romance country, a Romance region of a country in Wallonia. So you can see that here. Also cheek kisses, handshakes, smile with eye contact, and dress with care. look put together. It's the first thing we see when you greet before you put your hand out, or they do, is what you're wearing. Let's be realistic here. Milan is the fashion capital of the world. Anything from a catalog is coming out of Milan. Suit separates have gotten bigger over suits. Pocket squares over ties. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Usually natural fabrics. Is it pricier? It is. But often men, and France as well, will own a few shirts, a few pairs of pants and jackets, and they rewear them over and over because they buy high quality materials. Why do they do that? Because they don't have closets. They have wardrobes. They don't have space. So they buy good stuff and just keep those few things. It's the opposite of, clothes you wear for a few months that are more or less disposable. So why not dress like that? It shows that you care. It shows that you could dress up. So maybe buy a sport jacket or buy one dress. Relationships come first. There should be you're not going to get the big deal done in 3 days. You've got to hang out with people. Let them take the lead. They'll find the cafe. They'll order for you. It is a culture that is like no other that I've seen myself and that I've studied, that knows about the Dolce Vita, right? Which is technically means sweet life, the good life. I was going to show you some Italian gestures here.
There are over 250 Italian hand gestures.
But I'm going to skip that. By the way, we take it for granted that the language is different. Do look at videos about gesturing. You don't have to necessarily use them, but you want to be able to read them. And sometimes gestures have opposite meanings in culture. What may seem nice to you may be actually someone flipping you off in their culture. So be careful, and also that you don't do the same gesture back. Do look those up. There's no way to talk about them without seeing them. Okay, just a couple more things. Let's see. Build relationships again. Don't be rushed, but do be on time. Somebody else can be late. It doesn't mean you're late. That's a standard process. It is not an alpha male thing that you got there early or that they came late. You don't worry about that because you don't leave somebody there in any culture waiting. Of course, hospitality is everything. In Italy, there's nothing that people like more. Again, La Dolce Vita, simple pleasures. Learn all about the courses. More than any other culture I know, with the possible exception of some Chinese cuisines, you're gonna, this is your whole day here or your whole evening. Women do pretty well. And in fact, over a third of managerial positions are held by women now in Italy. Florence, I mean, what can you say about it? We're going to put on this slide. I can only do representations of the birth of the Renaissance, but also timeless fashion and style now, Tuscan foods, etc. You can't beat this. Even the Italian language itself is based on the Florentine tongue. There are multiple dialects. Italian is Florence. Okay, real quickly, if you would, I'm sorry for going to the end here. If you would just tell me what your letters are here, and notice they're scrambled, these weren't in order. This can tell you which of these levels you are. Are you a tourist, explorer, traveler, trusted guest, or citizen diplomat? Would anyone like to volunteer? My guess is most of you got A's. Some of you have E's, I'm going to say. I'm almost certain none of you were C's, though. Oh, good. Aditi, you're an E. Trusted guest, very good. Andrew, you're A. Traveler, yeah, there you go. Orton, you are an explorer, good. Most people are in the 3 in the middle. I think everybody here is probably going to be on tourist. I say that right when we are opposed to 3 C's and 2 D's, right? And it depends on where you've traveled, because you may travel to different places in a different way. If you've been to Europe, maybe more frequently, you're probably going to go further to explore, traveler, trusted guest. If it's somewhere new, a different kind of place, Really different culture. It tends to be more tourist and explorer. Very good. Now, one's not better than another. It's just a different way of seeing. That's when people criticize Rick Steves. I'm like, no, oh my gosh, I still have my old protocol note down there. Sorry about that. But no, it has its place. If you've got a limited time to see a brand new place, Rick Steves' route is a good way to go. Well, thanks for participating. I'm sorry I don't have time to show you this last clip from Road Loves Raymond at the very end. He rides a bicycle through town. He gives all the women flowers. He apologizes to his wife. He says they take off 2 hours at lunch just to enjoy the day, and we don't do that back home. He becomes a trusted guest. It doesn't mean he's going to become a citizen diplomat. By the way, I call it that because a diplomat could be appointed. A citizen diplomat is not appointed. Okay, real quickly, this happened to me when I was in Temple Bar in Dublin. There's a garbage truck outside, and I'm like, it's in the way. It's like, it's not in the way. Remember the African merchants in Paris? This is Dublin. And you get to see it's different, like 4 people in one truck, and the truck is tiny. That is Dublin. It's not in the way of Dublin. Okay, one last thing here is to think like Franklin. Here's Franklin if he lived today. He's just sort of dressed kind of in the middle, not casual, not formal. He's enjoying coffee. You know, if you sat down with him, you're going to have a great conversation. He's in no rush. He's not pushing himself. And he is building trust, showing respect to become part of the community. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for the little delay here, going a little longer. But do you have any comments, questions here? Please stay in touch. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Thank you so much to everybody who joined the training. If you have any feedback for us, please visit our website and let us know how you enjoyed the training and what you would like to see from us next year. And stay tuned for our next training in September, on the 25th of September, focusing on Mexico and Peru, where Dr. Clark will take us to South America and to Mexico. And with that, we thank you, and we will see you very soon.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming on board today. I'll see you in September. Bye.
Bye-bye.